Hello. It's 24 April 2015, and this is episode 4 of the Unseen Podcast. The Unseen Podcast is the unedited, unscripted spin-off of the Wow Signal, where we discuss a wider range of topics in a relaxed, stretched-out conversation. It's also an open participation podcast. That is, anybody who's interested in participating on the panel just has to let us know, and we will add you to the panel pool, and you will eventually get an invitation to join us on one of our episodes. The topics are not just those that we cover in Wow Signal, but can range much more broadly. And here, tonight, we are going to cover something that we've never even discussed on the Wow Signal, which is cryptocurrency and the culture around cryptocurrency. Now, you've probably heard of Bitcoin, but there's lots of other cryptocurrencies out there and different cultures around each one. So we have a special guest tonight, Hiroja Shibe from the Musingsofashibepodcast, podcast, and I'll introduce her in just a moment. With us tonight on the panel are Marsha Barnhart. Say hello, Marsha.
Hello.
And Buck Field.
How you doing, everyone?
Hello, everybody. Thanks for having me on, Paul.
Thanks for being on, Buck. Now, Marsha was on episodes 1 and 2, and Buck was on episode 3. So I won't ask them to repeat their bios, but so please look those up on the panelist page on unseenpodcast.com. Our special guest tonight is Hiroja Shibe, and she is probably best known to you as the producer and voice of the Musingsofashibepodcast, podcast, which covers DogeCoin, cryptocurrency, peer-to-peer, and lots of other things. Hello, Hiroja.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for having me on, Paul.
Yeah.
There's a great introduction there.
Thank you. Now,
thank you.
I'd like to say that I've been interested in the world probably best known to the public as Bitcoin for some time. But I think that quite recently I heard Hiroja on another podcast, which I believe was the Ozone Nightmare. Were you on the Ozone Nightmare, or you were on the Project Archivist as well? Yeah.
Yeah, I was on the Archivist with Ozone Nightmare. Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. Okay, yeah, that's how. So you were on Project Archivist, which I've been on recently as well, and so I got a sense that there's more to Bitcoin than just a bunch of Wall Street wonks who are trying to find a cheaper way to process payments, and so lately I've been digging in much deeper, and I found it really interesting. And there's a lot more to it than just a payment processing, peer-to-peer payment processing system. The whole peer-to-peer thing seems to be a big driver behind a lot of people's interest in it. How did you get interested in Hiroja?
Well, the unique aspect of Bitcoin in itself is that Shiba is also wrapped around a certain type of philosophy of, self-governance, self-control. And as an individual that dabbled a little bit in politics and lives in the southwest of the United States, which is known for being a hotbed for libertarianism and kind of sort of a less federal government, less intrusive government, I heard about Bitcoin pretty early on in 2010. And a lot of it had to do with because of the people who talked about it were part of the kind of like the less, the anti kind of tax government, more like buying gold and using gold. And they saw this as an opportunity to, instead of using gold, which was there was this coin called Liberty Coin, which people were trying to use as a form of currency that the federal government just shut down in 2010. And there was a big battle over it, and it was shut down. And when I heard about this technology, the ability to not only create your own currency, but it would function on the internet without any intrusion by the government, I was like, that's not going to last long. Because there's no way the government is going to allow anyone to, in essence, print their own money and have no control. That's the power of government, is the ability to print their own money. But it happened, it was successful, and it has grown and has gone very global, and there's no way to put the genie back in the bottle now. So I didn't mind in 2010. I didn't participate in it because I was like, anyone who's affiliated with this they're gonna get locked up. They're gonna get their assets frozen. I mean, I was very like, I've seen certain moments like this before where this has happened, and I'm just amazed that it did not happen.
Right. Well, Bitcoin's not particularly a U.S. phenomenon by itself, is it? There's been a lot of other countries involved.
Oh, it's very global. You can go to any country right now, presently, and you can utilize Bitcoin within that country. You can actually trade it out for a different currency, any currency really, which is not something you can say for a lot of currency.
Yeah. Now,
there's certain currencies that accept.
Right.
They won't allow you to exchange it in.
Yeah.
But Bitcoin, you can. They'll take that currency.
Right. And Bitcoin, and now,
and they'll use it, and that's its power.
Right. We should explain there's lots of other cryptocurrencies besides Bitcoin, right?
Presently, there's about 534 coins out there.
Wow. Can we let's give a very top level non-technical explanation of what is a cryptocurrency?
Cryptocurrency, if you think about what you use right now, like everyone has a smartphone, and you can use it to email somebody, you can use it to listen to your MP3 files, and you can take pictures and stuff like that. And it functions in the same way that all other technology that you use on the internet functions. The only difference is, for example, if you saw, like, I just recently saw the Fast and the Furious 7 movie. Right now, you can probably see that on some torrent files somewhere, and you can download it and copy it. Copy coin or any cryptocurrency. You can't copy it. You can't copy a picture you see on a website. You can't copy someone's email. You can't hack into it. It's just like a dollar bill is unique in its own sense, and it cannot be copied, and therefore it's protected by math system on the internet.
Right. Now,
it's about as simple as I can make it.
Yeah. So there's a mathematical scheme whereby you can send money from one person to another, and on a peer-to-peer basis, without a centralized authority, it's determined that money's been spent by you and it can't be spent again. Is that right?
That's correct. It can't be spent again, which is the problem with credit cards, because if anyone has a credit card or uses a debit card on any type of system, as with the recent hacks of Home Depot and Target have demonstrated, your information can be copied, cloned, and someone can spend that money in any other part of the world. And thus, you have like a huge fraud when it comes to credit cards. With the cryptocurrency, that's not going to happen. Once that money's been spent, just like cash, when you hand the cash register, the cash to the cashier, it's done. That transaction is done, and it cannot be undone.
Right. And we won't go into all the...
And you can't, print money or fake money or anything like that.
Yeah, we won't go into all the heavy math of how that works. But I should tell people there's a lot of good videos out there and other explanations if you're interested in digging into that. But now this was kicked off by a person who was using a pseudonym, or maybe it may have been a group of people. We don't know who it was, right? Who Satoshi Nakamoto is probably not the real name of whoever it is who wrote that initial paper.
No, it's not. And there's been several theories on who potentially could have written the paper, like the CIA conspiracy stuff, but nobody knows. This person did it in an anonymous fashion. They've never gone public. They've never done interviews. All they did was publish the paper, put the program out there, done a few blog posts and interactions with the very few individuals from the very beginning, and then left around sometime in 2011 and has not been back since.
So Satoshi Nakamoto might not have been Japanese, might not have been male, right? It might not have been one person, but many, right? So,
one person, yeah.
Well, it could have been a group of people. It could have been someone from. It might not have been an American. In fact, that a lot of people. What I've heard is most people think almost certainly not an American. Now, it's something interesting that I've noticed is that as you mentioned, there was a lot of libertarians interested in cryptocurrency because it's sort of a replacement for gold, or around 2008, a lot of people lost faith in Wall Street and central banks and the financial system in general. But do you think that was a factor in the takeoff of cryptocurrencies?
Yes, and that was the initial reason why it was created in the first place. I mean, one of the first embedded messages in the blockchain, which is an aspect of Bitcoin, was the failing of the bank system, of the TARP. It's a news report that was embedded into blockchain, and that was the reason. Satoshi Nakamoto stated the reason why he did this was that he did not want the ability to just basically, with the stroke of a pen, you can create however much money you need to. That individuals can have full, complete control of their financial wealth. That is not a centralized system like the current banking system that all governments have, but it's just you have the responsibility. You can actually control your wealth, and you have no concerns about someone telling you not to spend your money, not telling you the value of your money, no currency controls, no saving controls, no erosion of that control.
Mm-hmm. But now,
there are questions that have to do with how you set the value of a particular currency. Can you go into a little bit about that, because it is faith. There is nothing behind it. It's all numbers. There is no hard currency. So how's the typical?
There's nothing behind any of the form of currency currently existing out there. There's very few countries, I believe, currently right now in the Middle East, and it's becoming an issue and almost a war act issue, that some of them want to change from everything being back kind of in the oil sense and on the faith sense that the United States does, and going back to gold. But nothing is all about faith, the faith in whatever country or system. That's why certain currencies are trade higher in value than other currencies, even though their wealth in and of itself, as far as assets, are very strong. It's because people don't have faith in that country. I mean, look at Japan. Japan has a very strong, resources within its country. It's very tech savvy. It's very highly educated. It doesn't have the same like crime rate or homelessness or disease rate that other nations have. So it has a very strong people power. And you would think that would translate into its economic power, but people don't have faith in the same way that they have faith in the United States. And a lot of it has to do with the fact that the United States has an army, has a military system around the world. It has all these different treaties. It didn't get devastated by World War II like Japan did. And people have a stronger faith in the economic system in the sense of the idea or the image of the United States versus the yen of Japan. And that's what currently, operates our current currency system. With Bitcoin, what makes its value is just like with anything. Like, for example, look at a comic book, the Superman #1. It's rare. And that's why people have it as a value in the sense, so there's somebody out there who's willing to pay $1.5 million for that rare item. Bitcoin has that uniqueness that there's only 21 million coins ever going to be created. Each of these coins are very individually unique in and of itself, and there's people that have the desire. And then the only thing that really truly backs it up is the desire to have it, the ability for it to not to be copied or pasted, the encryption, the math is basically what protects it. So you have math, the desire, and the fact that there is no central control. And that's really what gives it its value. And that's why there's a fluctuation in the value of a single coin. I mean, when it first started, it was like less than a penny. Then went to 10 cents, 30 cents, $5, $10. It traded at one point up to $1,000, and now it's down to $2.30. So it really has to do with how many people want it, how many people have a need for it, and whether or not they trust the value of the economic system built around it.
And I would point out that that's the same thing with regard to gold, in that the only real value that gold has is that which we perceive.
Yes, but that perception is going to be eroding very soon, because in the sense that gold is physical. You have to transport it from point A to point B. It makes it very cumbersome to do such a thing. But you also have to think that as soon as we hit into space, which is a lot of investment is going into space, gold is no longer going to be a rare item. I mean, they've already done study after study about the asteroids, about how much gold is out there in existence. So as soon as the moment that someone actually touched down on an asteroid, peels that rock away and comes back with it, every single, rare commodity that we have as far as a physical asset is going to diminish.
Well, having listened to, and I have spoken with Chris Lewicki personally a number of times with Planetary Resources, there is no, they've said that their intent, I used to dismiss Planetary Resources as a pipe dream because I read a paper by a guy who said, look, what if Planetary Resources finds an asteroid made of 100% pure gold that's 100 meters in diameter? And he ran the numbers, this researcher ran the numbers on retrieving that to Earth. And he said, well, could that be done economically? And he ran the numbers and he said, no. Even if you discounted the depression in the global price of gold and said, look, this influx of gold wouldn't affect the market at all, which it would, still it wouldn't be economical to retrieve an asteroid of 100% pure gold. So this analyst said, therefore, the Planetary Resources mission is, well, he didn't say overly optimistic, but that's a more diplomatic way than he put it. And I was convinced by this. I said, well, look, these guys are trying to do something that cannot possibly be economically viable. And then I went to a meeting where Chris Lewicki sat in front of me, and he picked up a cup of water that was there in front of him, and he said, how much is this worth? How much is this water worth? And it was a little less than a liter, but he said, well, what if this liter of water was worth $1,000? And the worth of that water being $1,000 depends on where it is. For example, on the International Space Station, it is worth $1,000 because that's what it costs to get a kilogram of mass to the International Space Station. And he said, well, look, what we can do is we can mine asteroids for water because in space, water is just another mineral. It's frozen, it's a crystal, and we will mine it just like anything else, and we can deliver it to the International Space Station for $600 instead of $1,000. Well, obviously, anybody who has a facility in space and needs water is going to buy it from us rather than launching it from Earth for $1,000. And that changes the economics completely. As far as back on Earth, with
Buck, I think the point here is essentially that what Hiroja is saying, and I agree with, back to her point, right now, money is really tied to nothing but the illusion of a value. And until water becomes such a scarce commodity that there is undue influence given to it, we're still talking about a monetary system here in this normal day that has essentially vaporware behind it. And so I think the value of the alternative currencies, or perhaps more appropriately, maybe complementary currencies, which are the cryptocurrencies right now, I see the value of that being that it's taken some of the power away from very centralized banking systems. And that's one of the things I like about the cryptocurrencies, that it is peer-to-peer, and it's taking a lot of the middle guy out of things. I think that is going to benefit like third world countries and some of the work that, for example, DogeCoin's doing right now in philanthropic endeavors. This is where I see the value of cryptocurrency at this point.
Well, I would agree. But the thing is if you've got the opportunity to have, like, for example, gold on the one hand, which, as back into recorded history, as far as we know, 10,000 years in Egypt, gold has been valued. And you look at potential problems like, let's say there's widespread global electrical disruptions, and your wealth in gold, in bitcoins, is impaired by the lack of electricity around the grid.
Yeah.
You can still, because
if you couldn't have electronic transfers, then you don't have any money.
Because it's a physical thing.
But with Bitcoin, because it's math, the record keeping can be transferred to a paper format.
Yeah.
It just would take longer to process.
There are people that keep.
It can be transferred to a what format?
Oh, yeah, but
back to paper, because there's people that have actually hashed out using the math to create a private key and a public key.
Yeah.
Okay. If you had a big lightning strike in your location, how would you transfer your Bitcoin information back to paper?
You wouldn't most people don't slowly keep it on electronic format. They print it out on a piece of paper and secure it in a fashion of that sense. Just because it is, for security reasons, but also because of, it's good to have a paper backup. So you could, in essence, go to a paper format just like we did 50, 70 years ago before computers, where we did everything by hand and by typewriter. You could do it. It would just be cumbersome. Yeah. And it would take a long time, but the math behind it will still work.
Yeah, it's called a wallet, right? I mean, you have a wallet and you can have a paper wallet.
And a human being could work that?
A human being can work the math out, yes.
Yeah,
and it can be logged in. But like I said, it would take some doing to do. It's just like with any stock trade or options that occurred back in the day by hand or by paper. There's finicky stuff that would happen because someone would record something down, and things of that nature could still occur. But the mathematic principles behind it are still...
Yeah, but barring an EMP, and we still had, normal... Yeah, barring that, then let's talk about how... I would like to know, I have a gazillion questions, but I would like to know what the plan is with the cryptocurrency types to diffuse this new way of doing business throughout the world.
Well,
what's the process? What's the plan to get people to adopt this?
Well, there's several different plans. You spoke about how the charity and the philanthropical, the charitable aspect of the DogeCoin. There's people that right now with Bitcoin and DogeCoin, they're going into Africa, they're going into South America, and what they're doing is they're distributing Bitcoin. They're doing it through remittance, because a majority of the third world gets their wealth from the first world because they come in as workers, whether they be legally or illegally. And they transfer, 30, 40% of a particular nation's wealth comes from outside. And that money primarily through like Wells Fargo or some kind of banking system is expensive. I mean, I've had friends, I live in the Southwest, that are, they send money back down to Mexico. And to send $100, it could be $20. That's a lot of money.
Yeah.
And with Bitcoin, it's the same price. Whether you send $100 or $1 million, it's less than 30 cents, or less than a penny, depending on what you're sending.
One of the things, though, one of those things there, though, you kind of got to, from what I could see, you have to grease the wheels for the miners sometimes and give them a little extra on top so that your transaction will take place in a timely manner.
Yes,
I could see that could be a bit of a problem.
It can be a bit of a problem, and that's something that's being addressed internally with different coins on how to incentivize people to keep mining and keep the network going. But one of the big incentives is you want to keep mining, you want the network to go, because whatever coins you have are not going to have any value if there's not a system that exists.
Also, doesn't the mining makes
an efficient system?
The mining makes fraud less likely, right? Because the incentive to perpetrate a big fraud on the system, to attack the system, is reduced because you can make more money just by mining. So
yes, you make more money by mining. You make more money by keeping the system honest than to be dishonest, and that is the incentive. So while there is a bit of concern of the cost of electricity and stuff like that for people to keep mining, the actual incentive to actually continue to mine, a lot of people just do it to keep the network going. They don't want someone to have dishonest, to have a double spend, and have wealth to be devalued.
I'm sorry, can you say that again?
Yes, you run the numbers on what your standard electricity costs would be.
Yes, there's a number of different. There's a number of different sites that do the math for you on the different types of rigs that are out there. For Bitcoin and a lot of the cryptocurrencies, they use ASICs chips. So how many ASIC chips you need, how much power you should have, all that stuff is broken down to the mathematics and what you get out. and it's broken down. And right now there is a bit of a war going on because a lot of the mining, when it's happened, is it's become kind of centralized, where people with the most money have the ability to create literally warehouses and mining facilities to mine. And the individual no longer has the ability to mine. They can go to certain other coins where they made the math to the point where you have to use a computer. You can't have a specialized chip to mine it. And then what people do is they take that coin and trade it out for Bitcoin. And there's some payout for that, but in the long run, that's not going to really work. That's kind of a short-term option.
Yeah. Are you familiar with?
So really, what it is?
Go ahead.
So really, what it is what a lot of people do, even though they don't receive any kind of monetary value from mining, is they do it for the sole purpose of making sure that in the long term, their currency is going to have value because they know that someone's not going to, break the system.
Right. Now, you've heard of, I'm sure you've heard of something called Shapeshifter, right?
Yes.
You can just trade one type of coin for another pretty easily with that, or? I mean.
Yeah, you basically what you do is you can trade any of the other kind of second tier, or third tier cryptocurrencies into either Bitcoin, DogeCoin, or any of the other top tier coins. And there is no actual physical money transferred in the system. It's just trading out coins. And so it kind of gets around a lot of the regulations that are going on with the cryptocurrencies in different countries, because all you're doing is you're exchanging coins. You're trading out currency in essence. You're not trading actual fiat.
Right.
So a lot of people do that. They either mine and then they trade out their coins that they mine. And it's a great system. It allows people to have a greater access to buy stuff because Bitcoin is still the number one coin that is accepted by merchants. It also allows people to be able to secure and trade out and diversify the different types of coins they have out there. Because you never know, Bitcoin can easily be displaced. A different coin can be easier to use. I mean, Bitcoin right now is $230, but a Dash coin is $3. So if you were going to buy a coin, which one would you buy? The Bitcoin or a lot of Dash coins and wait for it to go up?
Right. Now,
or use it?
Can you explain why Dogecoin came about and other alternatives to Bitcoin? Why just Bitcoin by itself wasn't good enough?
Well, because with Bitcoin by itself, there's still flaws to the system. I mean, it's the first of its creation. There's only 21 million coins, so that means not everyone's going to get a coin. Even though the coins are divisible, just like a dollar is divisible into 100 pennies, not everyone's going to get access to that coin. It takes a long time for what's called confirmation to demonstrate that the money that you spent was spent. It's 10 minutes for each confirmation, so it can take up to an hour to actually receive a coin. So what people did was they thought of a better math system where things are faster. Dogecoin is a minute to confirm. So in 6 minutes, you spent that coin. So a merchant doesn't have to wait for an hour to know that they have the money in hand. It's 6 minutes, which is easier for a merchant-client relationship. The math is a little bit easier. There's other different features. Some people are very concerned about privacy. They don't want their information to be tracked. So certain coins have a stronger privacy hold than Bitcoin does. There's easier mining options. Certain math problems are easier to computer. So people created coins for that purpose so that the mining algorithms are faster. The network options are a little bit more different. I mean, there's different stuff that people have added and changed and done using different types of technology to make it easier for people to utilize the crypto coin and to be more accessible to the public. And these are some of the things that Bitcoin wasn't, when it first came out, wasn't possible for it to do, because once it was done, it was done.
Right. Now, Bitcoin's still pretty thin, right? I mean, there's, like you said,
well, I've read recently that.
Go ahead, Marsha. Marsha, you there?
Well, I didn't want to interrupt you. This latency in recordings, man, that's a problem. But what very good things about using alternative currency and cryptocurrency and everything, but it seems like, this is the early period for this type of financial, shall we say, a financial approach. It's very early on, and there's a lot of unsettled things about this, like Jackson Palmer, who was one of the founders. He just kind of didn't he just recently throw his hands up and say, man, this started out as a pretty good idea, but now I see a bunch of people who are coming in from the outside and figuring out how to work this and essentially make it as bad as the regular banking system. Now, and in addition to that, then you've got, every time you've got ne'er-do-well sociopaths are going to build things like they did with the Android system in Bitcoin. I think they built a thing called Bad Leprechaun. And that then was a way to abuse the system, and they started stealing Bitcoins. This is an early system, and there's an awful lot of things that have to shake out before this whole thing gets standing on its legs. And there's an awful lot of, I don't know how many different coins you said, but it seems they have different flavors of coins have a different maturity value. Like, for example, Bitcoin is supposed to be like the adult's coin, and then they've got sex coin, which happens to be the perv's coin, and then they have DogeCoin, which happens to be the people who kind of, started out as a little lark making a meme that decided, hey, we could actually do something with it. So there's all these flavors and philosophies behind this cryptocurrency, this alternative type of financial thing, that I'm just wondering how it's going to get diffused and shaken out. It'll take time, but what do you see sitting where you do, Hiroji? What do you see as the future for it? If you're going to look down five years, what would you say?
Well, I do see, whether it be Bitcoin or one coin or maybe a series of coins. I mean, there's not just one particular currency out there that people utilize. I mean, they use the US dollar, the ruble, the euro, the pounds, or gold for the diversification. I see eventually that this one cryptocurrency or another is going to be the standard. And just like you go from the US to England or the US to Europe and you exchange your dollars for euros, you're going to exchange your dollars or whatever currency you have within your country to cryptocurrency. That's what it's going to be. It's going to be the internet of money. It's just going to be like you go to any other nation and you exchange your currency out for that nation. And that's what the internet is going to be. And people are going to be accepting of it because the math behind cryptocurrency and the way it is done allows for transactions across the world to be secure and safe and instant in a sense, versus the current financial system when you do money transfers. I mean, if you've ever had to deal with transferring your wealth from out of this country into another country, or from one state to another, like for example, I had a roommate, his car broke down, and he didn't have the funds to fix his car, but he had a job, he needed to leave the state, and he only had a certain amount of money. So he asked his parents, we were in college, he asked his parents to transfer funds, and they had to use a money transfer. They had to use Wells Fargo. And that took time. That took a day for it all to go through. I mean, and a day can be the matter of difference between someone having a job or not having a job, or someone being able to pay a bill or not pay a bill. Where if this were right now and he were to do it, he would have that money in 6 minutes or within an hour. And
I agree that the cryptocurrency.
Now you're saying.
Go ahead, Marsha.
Go.
Okay, but
all right.
Buck, you go first.
You go ahead.
Okay. I agree that the advantages of instantaneous transaction and processing on the internet is extremely valuable, but I separate that overall value to me doesn't imply that a single currency will be the result. To me, I see this as a new ecosystem of competition, especially given the available evidence now of vulnerabilities in the system, different ways for people to game the system. And so I think that, I'm just looking at it from my perspective. As a consumer, what I'm going to be interested in is what offers me the best, most reliable currency option, and I will select that, because not only is it instantaneous for transfer of value, but it's also instantaneous for me to switch currencies. And as soon as I find out that my X coin is vulnerable, I'm going to move to the Y coin, which is a new thing which at least advertises, as much as I can research it, because I don't really want to research cryptocurrencies. I'm not interested in it. I'm interested in what it can do for me, but it's sort of like I'm not really interested in real physical coins, real physical gold, or real physical pieces of paper with dead presidents on it. I'm interested in what I can do with those things. I want to buy stuff and get on with the business of life. And so, for into the math and security, that's fine. But I see this as a new explosion of options as opposed to a single thing will be settled upon long term or even short term.
I think one of the problems people are concerned about is volatility. And that, of course, there's volatility in all the markets, but when you have an entire governmental system behind a particular currency, they can dampen down a lot of volatility. And the beauty about cryptocurrencies is that it doesn't have a centralized banking system. There isn't a banker that's going to dole things out and work that way. But because of that, when you rush, Buck, from one currency to the other because X now has just tanked, everyone rushes to Y, and now they may not all rush to Y. They may rush to these other things. So this is going to cause volatility that I think is going to keep people pretty nervous for a long time.
Yeah, I agree.
Well, the thing about
go ahead.
Go ahead, Paul.
Well, I'm just going to say that what I've read is that Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies are pretty thinly traded by the standards of the major governmental issue fiat currencies, and so they are going to be, as soon as somebody sneezes and says, oh, I don't know about Bitcoin, its price is going to drop, and because it is thinly traded. Now, once it becomes more mainstream, it will have less volatility. I mean, currently government-backed currencies all have some volatility. They can go up and down, but and the central banks try to control that, but they often fail. And so that's one thing. I think as it gets more mainstream, you're going to draw the attention of people who see. Nobody controls Bitcoin or DogeCoin. Nobody has any. There's no central authority. It's built into the way it's done. It's a peer-to-peer approach. There's no way that you can say I'm the central bank for Dogecoin, and I'm going to decide what the money supply is now.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
That's.
Yeah.
That I wonder.
That's the beauty of it.
Okay, I don't understand why. Can you explain to me why it's different when an individual says, look, this money no longer has any value. Like, let's say there's a central control bank, and they say, look, this paper money that you accepted, it no longer has any value. What's the difference between that situation and a general consensus among the holders of a digital currency that they have a belief that this currency no longer has any value? What's the difference?
I think the difference in a sense is because it's
I don't see a difference.
Well, I see a difference. I think it's because it's not a single individual where you have so many voices that are saying no or yes that it's kind of like the mob. There's a theory about the mob where if you look at the group and look at the math of a mob, you get a certain consensus, you get the wisdom of the mob. And that's kind of something that's built in these cryptocurrencies where you do kind of get the wisdom of the mob. What direction it moves.
I don't deny that you can get the wisdom of the mob, but the thing is that you need to have the wisdom of the crowd. And I don't know if you read that book.
And crowds aren't very wise.
And yeah, but if they're handled correctly and they're organized by some, dictatorial authority properly, you get a diversity of opinion that on average gets this very accurate assessment. But we don't have that. And this is regarded, I don't see either the central control or the diverse opinion as the kind of panacea that either end of the spectrum seems to be advocating for. And I understand that having widespread, diverse participation has an advantage. I also see having a central, reliable authority that's got marble columns and has been there a long time that provides reassurance. Go ahead.
But reliable to whom? I mean, who has the full benefit of the current economic system? It's very small, very little. Where versus this peer-to-peer, everyone has the full economic weight of the benefit of the system. It depends truly on a meritocracy, like how smart you are, how well you know how to do something. Because with a centralized system, if you look at who has the best interest rate, who has the ability to say, well, I'm putting these bad loans in this company here, that company's going to tank, but all these good loans and all this good stuff is going to be here, and I'm not liable for all that bad stuff. I mean, there's such a significant manipulation because we're currently not in a pure free market system. We are in a crony capitalist system, and that is the difference between the centralized system and the peer-to-peer system, because there is not cronyism cannot take a hold because they cannot control the map and they cannot control the crowd.
Right.
Because just look at the MP3s and the
hidden manipulation is the problem.
And it's all apparent and seen on the blockchain, because if you try to manipulate, like they've seen what has happened with the Mt. Gox and these different collapses and these different attempts to manipulate Bitcoin, it is trackable, it is seen, and just kind of like the herd mentality with getting inoculations. Once something has happened and it has occurred and it's seen and it's transparent, because it is transparent, you just have to understand and look at the math, then it's not going to happen again. And that's why these scams that have heard happen in Bitcoin, they used to take a year to pay out, then months, and it's weeks. They're getting shorter and shorter because people are getting more hip and wise to these, and that's why it's the crowd and the system does work, and that's why people are gravitating to this peer-to-peer thing, because they are not getting the full breadth and benefit of an economic system. They're just not. That's why they're seeking to be paid in Bitcoin. They're seeking to sell their goods in Bitcoin. They're seeking to not only take the actual principles of the block technology behind itself, but apply it to different concepts, from protecting their message services from the NSA, to be able to transmit data and secure it in a cloud without anyone hacking into it or anyone peeping into that information, to be able to distribute. Think of it as a sense of medical knowledge is all behind these different paywalls of all these different colleges and universities and stuff like that. Imagine if someone were to take their, the cure for AIDS or their concept about cancer and put it on the web and to be able to distribute securely across the world in an instantaneous fashion to where anyone and everyone could see it. You don't have to be concerned about some pharmaceutical company manipulating the data or removing the data or changing the data to make it look good or look great. You're going to know right off the bat that that's the data, it's been inputted, and that's it.
Well, wait a minute.
And
that
Hiroja,
sounds great, but what about the crackpots? I get this great cure for cancer paper, but it needs to be vetted, doesn't it? I'm not qualified to assess it.
Everything is vetted. Everything is vetted, but the data in itself, like that data you put up there, and once it's been inputted in the blockchain, you can't go back and change it and say, oh, no, I meant to do this, or no, I meant to add this. Everyone sees it, and it's instantaneous, and you can't change it. I mean, this is the problem with a lot of information that is out there, is a lot of it has been removed, a lot of it's been altered, and you can't tell when it was altered, you can't tell when it was been changed.
Oh, absolutely.
You don't know who published it, who did it, but when you use something, the technology that's behind Bitcoin, the blockchain, the map, you know when it was entered into the data. You can have the sense of who may have done it, because everything is public. The identity could be kind of tracked to that singular address. That singular individual keeps inputting information. It's kind of like Wikipedia, where they're having issues with people going in, like governments, and changing data all the time. Wikipedia has to combat it. That's not going to happen on something like a blockchain. Once that information has been entered, you can't change it. So, for example, say if someone were to put a Wikipedia up and put it on the blockchain, my birthday date is in July and it's 1980. I can't go back and change it and be like, no, I was born in 83 to make myself appear or seem younger. That's not going to happen. It's that information secured. So there's a lot of things that could be done that could be applied across the board as far as social changes, as far as economic changes, as far as political changes.
Yeah.
When it comes to this
And
technology.
it reminds me of
that kind of breeds.
It reminds me of
Go, Paul.
Reminds me of the move that's afoot now to register all scientific studies, particularly biomedical studies, because the problem that a lot of people do is they say, oh, look at this promising new drug and let's do a study. And then the study turns out that the drug doesn't work or isn't as effective as thought. And they just don't publish that. And if you register every study, then every result has to be, you'd have to explain why you didn't publish it. And so there's a real strong move afoot to make that happen. And because there's a lot of problems right now with science and the fact that a lot of science is done in private and it's not open to the public.
And those that are done in public and get negative results are not published because it doesn't help anyone who's involved in distribution of results.
Well, it doesn't. Scientists generally don't get much credit for publishing negative results. They don't.
No.
It doesn't make your career to say, oh, by the way, this drug doesn't work.
Hey, I discovered nothing.
But I think if we were to more publicly distribute that knowledge, then people would be like, it's good to know that this does not work, so we can find the thing that does work.
Right.
Because I think if we were to be more open about the scientific study and understand that all things are not going to work. Yes, we spent maybe $5 million on the study, but now we have the answer. And we can look at that data, and scientists are very good at piecing together and taking out little bits and reapplying it to stuff all the time. I mean, look at the drug Viagra. It was meant to do something else when they created it, and it came out a different result.
A treatment for angina.
Yes. And this is what we have. And it's also been used, that drug has also been used to help with lungs, with people being able to breathe. That's science behind it. But not all that data is out there for everyone to look at and see and be like, I can see how this can be reapplied, or I can see where you went wrong. And I think if we were to allow scientists and allow doctors and allow medical research to be wrong, I think we would get more of these studies out there.
Marsha,
I am really in favor of decentralized, unregulated, down person-to-person type of interaction. That's where you get your innovation, and I think that's where people are more comfortable rather than having something brought to them from on high. They're down in the trenches, and this is a person-to-person type interaction here. It's not going through a central authority. I think that's a problem. Central authorities create bureaucracies. Bureaucracies create inefficiencies, and then you have all kinds of abuses. And I think if you can keep this in what you call competitive, I think that's just win, win, win. But the problem is that the authorities that have centralized control right now, they're not going to like that. And their main interest, I think, is right now. They like the idea that highly encrypted information that they can't take that they can't get into. I don't think they like that. That makes those people nervous.
Well, they can get into it.
That's what I like
they just
about
can't control
this whole thing.
I mean, that's one of the major features of Bitcoin. And
well, I don't think they can get through the encryption.
Well,
no, and they can't even get into PGP.
No, I think the encryption is what's the beauty of it, and that's what keeps everybody out.
Well,
that's what keeps information flowing efficiently, and you can't abuse it.
Well, it's hard to fake. That's why the encryption comes in. It also makes it. There's something called a public ledger, and everybody has access to that ledger. So, and that's part of the model here that I think.
Right. Yeah. Okay. That is all open.
Yeah. And that's why it's
But you also
peer-to-peer.
have your private end of it, your private end.
Yeah, you don't have to use your real identity.
Yeah, you have your private encryption stuff and you have your public encryption stuff. And that's just great. I love that. I hope we go to this, but I cannot see that large banking institutions are going to say, gosh, this is a great idea. Let's just adopt this right away.
Well, they are, and that's why Jackson Palmer and a number of
large
people
banking institutions?
Yes, they have invested in different types of, this is what, people of power do. They try to co-opt movements and ideas and technology to manipulate or control it for themselves. I mean, they've already invested in a number of different cryptocurrency businesses, exchanges. They are putting forth, different types of action, PACs and communities to legislate, different states and the federal government in different countries for the sole purpose of trying to control cryptocurrency, because they see this as a very direct attack on their money, their pocketbook. I mean, if you just think of the sense of,
how do you feel about that?
Well, I find it very cringy, because a lot of these crypto businesses are accepting these people on their boards, and they're accepting this money. And a lot of this, a lot of the idea behind the cryptocurrency is not being part of the financial legacy system, to get away from it. And I think what it is that people are not willing to wait 5 or 10 years for things to develop and be processed. They want that kind of instantaneous wealth, which is a systematic problem within Silicon Valley, in that the tech elite in itself, they all think that their idea is going to make them billionaires. And that's a bit of an issue within the cryptocurrency movement. My biggest concern here within the States is seeing how it's a possibility where you just have the New York Stock Exchange, you have the exchange in Chicago, and you have the Pacific Exchange. You only have 3 exchanges in the entire United States that trade stocks. That they could just basically say that there's only one exchange where you can process your cryptocurrencies in the States, and all others cannot exist. That is something that they could potentially possibly try to do. Now, how they're going to enforce that? Well, they can look at the public ledger and see how trades are going to occur. How are they going to identify people? There's already a company out there that's been able to tag IP addresses to people's public address. So once they have your IP address, they can potentially have your identity. There's also the concept of the fact that a lot of exchanges already, for the last 3 years, have been taking people's ID for KYC purposes, have already have your information on hand.
You are a real gold mine of information on this diverse ecosystem.
Yeah. Yeah.
This is all kinds of stuff that I mean, there are aspects of this, as with new technologies, that provide a broad foundation. It just grows up and evolves in ways that are very hard to predict. But the thing that I worry about is that one of the things that tends to always evolve, and when money gets involved, a thing that evolves very quickly is the predator, and that's a problem.
Yeah, well, I mean, was a lot of what Satoshi Nakamoto came up with was trying to figure out how to de-incentivize the predator, right? Where at what point does the predator,
a problem that has not been solved?
Yeah, I mean, predator has to have he has to get more out of his. We lost her. Okay. Well, hopefully she'll be back soon. So, but anyway, a predator has to...
Yeah, I would think that the problem would be when the government... Go on.
Oh, she's back. Okay, good. You're back. Your mic is muted, though. Okay. Yeah, go ahead, Marsha.
Sorry there. Go ahead. Yeah, sorry.
I think it's scary to have the government and large institutions, banking institutions, trying to co-opt this, because in a way they're kind of part of the problem. They are part of the problem. They manipulate the money supply. They're the ones that are causing many of perhaps our business cycles. The Fed was put into place to minimize problems like that. They have not done their job. They failed miserably. But guess what? They ain't going away.
No.
Now, that's the neat thing about this very groundswell level. This is a bottom-up push to kind of get some leverage back from a very centralized system of finance in the world. And this cryptocurrency, this peer-to-peer type of thing, this would be a great way to do it if you can keep them out of it, because they want to co-opt it, I think. And then I think there goes the great power of a bottom swell financial complete sea change approach to how we do business and how we pay for goods and services and that type of thing. I just don't know how it's going to, I just worry about this. It's in its nascent stages, and I worry about it being able to get out there and really do what has been envisioned from the beginning, as opposed to be co-opted and just be some kind of funny money little thing that we use, like, I can't think of the term right now, but essentially like barter.
Wooden nickels.
Yeah. Just barter stuff, as opposed to having an entire paradigm shift as to how we pay for goods and services around the world, instead of having these money grubbers holding all this stuff like it's theirs, and it isn't theirs. Everybody put into that coffer, and they're running it all. And, we could do a whole nother show on how screwed we are by the federal banking system. But here, this is just this sweet little possibility of being able to change the whole thing. God, I hope it happens.
What's your biggest worry?
Well, beyond the fact that their attempts to regulate it, the other is to try to demonize it. And they try to do this with Silk Road, which was the drug marketplace. I'm sure people pretty much have heard of it.
Sure.
And one of the primary reasons why Bitcoin got such its value was because people were using it on the Tor network, this drug marketplace, to purchase, narcotics and stuff like that. However you want to feel on the subject.
I wish I had heard about that so much sooner.
Well, there are currently other marketplaces out there if that's something that you're interested in looking and seeing.
Okay, I will contact you offline on that.
Okay. But what happened was, because one thing that people considered to be, not a good thing, gave a value to something that it really is at the craw of, the financial system. They're going to try to demonize it. They're going to try to say, as they already say with encryption, that, child pornographers are going to use it, terrorists are going to use it. They keep saying this about terrorism, and everything's on the public ledger. There is no tangible evidence that terrorist people are using this. As far as the child pornography thing, I have no idea on that, but they have disproven time and time again it's not being used for terrorism. It may be used for drug purchases and stuff like that, but so is cash.
Terrorists are using cars, and they're using CD technology for playing music.
Yes.
Every new technology that comes out has a horror movie made about it.
Yes.
There was a horror movie made when the VHS tape came out and the Betamax tape came out. It was called Videodrome.
Yeah.
And then there was another movie that came out when the CD was invented. It was I Come in Peace. Aliens were using CDs to decapitate people. There's some teen thing about a social network where there's mind control causing people who are wrong, the ghost of a person who was wronged, some teen was causing her Facebook friends to she was seeking revenge and they were killing themselves on some social network. That's out right now. I don't know the title. But every new technology has horror stories told about it, and this is no different, I'm sure.
It is no different, but they're going to keep piping the horn about this, and it's going to affect, in a sense, if you think about legislative action, because the people who vote are, 55 and plus typically is the largest demographic of voters. They're not necessarily online on the consistent basis that the younger people are who are using this technology. The people who use cryptocurrencies are between the ages of 25 and 35, that is a demographic that has been mostly affected by the economy. I mean, right now, that is they have their future is extremely uncertain. Their wages have gone down. They're not capable of purchasing homes at the rate that their previous generations have happened. And they're going to try to squash this for them, just so they can have control over another generation in it.
Mm-hmm.
And whether or not that's going to work out or not, I'm not certain.
Now, what to do about it?
Well, if you look at the MP3 files and torrent sites when it comes to the movie industry and the music industry, I mean, they try to quash that down. Look at Napster. Napster gave birth to the whole concept of social media. From Napster, that's why we have, Facebook and Twitter and all that, and even Spotify. But that hasn't stopped people from exchanging music files at all. It hasn't stopped people from exchanging movie files. What has happened is that people are like, well, if people are doing this online, why not create a business around it? Why not actually create a business around it? And that's why there's Netflix is such a powerhouse right now, because the movie industry did not perceive or realize that people actually want to watch their stuff at home, online, no fuss, no muss. And now they're trying to, you see Hulu, you see all these different types of efforts to mimic Netflix, but they're not doing the same thing that Netflix does, and they're more expensive. I mean, that's why HBO finally, after so many years, has finally gone to where you don't have to purchase a subscription to HBO. You can just pay for the app and watch HBO. It's still $15. But
this was all driven by the consumer.
Yes.
This was all consumer driven.
Because
that's how cryptocurrencies need to be. Consumer driven and lots of choice.
Yes, and that there's a lot of choices out there as far as purchasing power. The biggest hurdle is just the access to the cryptocurrencies, to be able to acquire it. That's the biggest hurdle for consumers right now, because people can't mine it. They have to purchase it, and you still have to work within the financial system in order to do that. Credit cards or cash, where you have to trust somebody, just kind of like going like a Craigslist thing and going meet in person and purchasing a coin. For some people, that's a big deal. Using credit cards and debit card systems and banking systems, some people are, very hesitant on that because of stuff like that. But once that hurdle has been done away with, I mean, they're trying to do ATM machines where you just put your cash in and you get your coin out. I think that's the best method for people to get their hands on coins. Once that has reached a certain level where people are able to...
I'm sorry, but what would be neat? What would help me? If you were interested, and I'm not your 20 to 30-year-old, honey. What would help me is if cryptocurrency companies provided for lack of a better term, debit card that I could buy that says, if I buy this card that I can use, it will be imbued with, 500 DogeCoins. And I could take that and have that now and be able to instantly trade with that. This would be a commodity I could buy that would have the DogeCoins. I could also buy some Bitcoins. And if I was feeling a little randy, I could buy the sex coins. And if I happen to be traveling somewhere else, I might buy the African Way coins. This way, I think you could diffuse from bottom up this type of currency better than the kind of mottled together way it's done now. Do you think that would work?
Well, it is working. There's they have that in the Philippines. They have that in Mexico. There's smaller companies have done this with Bitcoin and Dogecoin, where there's a company called Pyro that does that with Dogecoin and Bitcoin and Litecoin, where you can purchase it just like you would purchase Facebook money or Zen money or any of those type of like Xbox memberships. You can buy a card and you have $20, $50, $100, and that's Bitcoin or Dogecoin. It just hasn't reached a mass level yet, and I don't understand why there's not enough people investing in that concept. Because if you go to any,
that's the way to go.
In Mexico, where they have this, it's in 7-Eleven. If you go to any convenience store like a Circle K, 7-Eleven, or Walmart, and you can purchase $100 with Bitcoin, people are going to do that. They're going to purchase that Bitcoin
right.
I don't want
to have to download a wallet.
Yes.
I don't want to have to download a wallet onto my device to start trading in this coin. That's an impediment. That's a business model problem right now. Pardon
That
me?
is independent for a lot of people, but there's also debit and credit cards where you can, if you already have Bitcoin, you can look at the system and swipe it into any store, and it's a Visa or MasterCard. So there's that system too, and I think that's something like a prepaid type of a card system they can do as well. And this is something that people are attempting and trying to do. It just hasn't reached a level of awareness yet. It's still very small, very niche within the cryptocurrency ecosystem.
Well, we're getting close to the end of our time.
Well, I would suggest DogeCoin start marketing the fact. Okay. Well, I think that'd be a good idea to market that.
Yeah, and I think we're seeing a lot of new products based on cryptocurrencies. So, Hiroja, I want to thank you for joining us tonight.
Yes, indeed.
Can you tell our audience where they can find out more about you and your podcast?
You can find my show, Musings of the Shibe podcast, on either iTunes or Stitcher or any of the podcatchers that are out there. Whichever pod app you have, I'm on there. You can also find me on musingsofashibepodcast.wordpress.com, which is changing soon. Starting May 10th is going to be Musingsofashibepodcast.space, all one word.
I'm sorry, that's Muses of the what?
Musings.
Musings of a Shibe podcast.
Shibe.
Of a Shibe.
Shibe.
Shibe. S-H-I-B.
Shibe.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
.space. I have that domain name,
and I'm looking at podcast.
And I will be migrating all my information onto there. I'm on Twitter a lot, Musings of a Shibe, and you can also find me on Reddit as Hiroja. I'm often on the DogeCoin site answering questions or upvoting people or praising them and stuff like that. And if anyone is listening to this and wants to know more about Dogecoin or cryptocurrencies in general, I encourage you to go onto that subreddit because it's one of the more friendlier subreddits, but more importantly, people will take the time to answer any and all of your questions. I mean, there's not anyone that's going to tell you that's a dumb question. They'll take the time to either email you, speak with you, and guide you to the best information possible for whatever it is you're seeking to know about cryptocurrencies.
Great. And we'll have links to your podcast in the show notes at unseenpodcast.com. And we will also have, I'll put in as many links as I can find to basic resources where people can learn more about cryptocurrency, Bitcoin, Dogecoin, and even the subreddit for Dogecoin, which I've also recently been poking around inside myself. So thanks everybody. Thanks, Hiroja.
Thank you, Paul.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Buck
Thank you, Paul, for having me on.
Great.
Buckfield and Marsha.
Thank you very much.
If you want to know more about Buck and Marsha, go look at the panelist page on unseenpodcast.com. If you want to participate in unseenpodcast.com as a panelist, just email unseenpodcast@gmail.com and we'll set you up. And you'll get an invitation. Right now, new people are going to get their first invitations around June. So all you need is a computer, and we can hook you in and make you a panelist. And you don't need answers. You don't need expertise. You just need good questions. So thanks, everybody, and we'll see you next week on the Unseen Podcast, episode 5.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, Paul.
Thank
Marsha,
you.
nice to meet you again.
Bye.